Hello and welcome to From the Fringe. I'm Chris. It's good to have you with me. Today's show is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to share with you an experience that happened to me personally last week. It's pretty interesting. But first of all, I want to recap on the Antler Girl. We had a look at her last week. So, if you'll remember, I did a video on a encounter with an entity in the forest. This entity was a young girl with a white dress and black polka dots who happened to have antlers on her head. The experiencer also got the impression that this young girl was a cannibal, so I concluded that she had encountered the deer woman. And as you can see, a lot of people on this subreddit also came to the same conclusion. Well, it turns out that this encounter happened in Australia, so that rules out the deer woman. Now, I don't know what this thing is. It's not in any Australian legend or folklore. We don't even have deers in this country, at least not native deers. So, could it be some sort of global phenomenon? The reason why I came back to this story is because, while searching for other stories, other paranormal stories, I found on a totally different subreddit this story. I used to live in a conservative Muslim country, so nobody wore mini dresses, ever. One day I saw a woman, and she was wearing a polka dot mini dress, a white dress with black dots. Remind you of something? She had red hair and high heels. She was walking around, and nobody reacted to her. She would pass by people, including men, and they wouldn't even look at her. It was like she didn't exist. And let me tell you, in a country where guys never see women dressed like that in real life, they would all have their eyes glued to her, but they acted like they couldn't see her. It was so strange that I had to investigate. I bet you did. So I took off after her. She walked past the door to a building, and I was right behind her, very close. Between us was maybe just 20 centimeters. That is very close. That guy was getting his creep on. But the moment she passed by that door, she vanished into thin air. So if this was a genuine encounter, then it's very interesting indeed. Maybe we are actually looking at some sort of global phenomenon. Although I do want to bring your attention to a couple of points in the subreddit. So as I mentioned, this Reddit is totally unrelated to the Antler Girl. This Reddit is about spirit mimics, which is one of my favourite topics. Apparently this guy is quite a prolific experiencer of the paranormal, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Some people, or most people, when they experience the paranormal, they experience it once. But there's quite a few other people who, for some reason, attract paranormal activity. And they experience a series of events throughout their life. Excuse me. So we can find the story I just read down here. And the first issue that I have is that this story was posted a couple of weeks after the Antler Girl story. So my concern is that perhaps this guy might have read the Antler Girl story and has added the polka dot dress to his story to embellish it. It's within the realms of possibility. It's probably unlikely, but it could have happened. The other concern I have is, you'll notice here, that his account has been deleted. So I don't know if he's deleted that account or if the moderator has deleted his account. I do know that in most subreddits, maybe all, that there are rules. And in some of these Reddits, if someone's found to be fraudulent, written some sort of fraudulent story, that could be means for them to be booted. So I don't know if that's happened here. So these are pretty minor issues. However, if we're going to toy with the idea that we are dealing with a worldwide phenomenon involving a strange woman who materializes in a polka dot dress, which sounds absolutely ridiculous, then we have to know that so far we are dealing with extremely flimsy and extremely weak evidence. In fact, I would say that it's not even evidence at all. But in saying that, if you happen to come across a story involving a strange woman in a polka dot dress, I would be very interested to hear that, so please do share. Okay, so I want to move on to apports. Now, apports are a very commonly reported experience in the paranormal world. Most people just write it off as bad memory or a misplaced object. But not all of these cases are so easily explained. Check this out. I had an office with a computer and had just bought a USB flash drive. After using it one day, I pulled it out of the USB drive and the cap popped off. It fell down between the wall and the desk. I heard it as it fell. I got down and looked and couldn't see it. I searched for it many times over the weeks, and I never found it. Several months later, I decided to remodel the office, and once again the cap crossed my mind. I thought, aha, I'll find it when I move everything out. Never saw it. I pulled up the carpeting and put down hardwood flooring. No cap. I was perplexed, but eventually forgot about it. About a year later, I got up one morning and the cap was sitting on my dresser, just there, right in the middle. And then there's this one. When I was about 16 and still living at home, my mum worked at a school, so we used to come home for the lunch hour, along with my brother, who was about 11 at the time. One lunch hour, we were about to leave the house and go back to school, but my mum couldn't find her lipstick anywhere. After searching all of downstairs, we decided to go upstairs and check each of our bedrooms. The lipstick was not there, so my mum said we had better just leave without it, so we wouldn't be late. On her way back down the stairs, my mum gasped out loud and froze. Me and my brother were just behind her. The lipstick was in the dead center of the hallway downstairs, standing up on its own. It was one of those long tubes, so it was really eerie to see it standing up like that. It was as if someone had carefully placed it like that. Now that's creepy. It's got sort of the vibes of a poltergeist there. This next one has the feel of a poltergeist event as well. My mum and I were in the dining room, sewing me a pair of pants. We cut out one half of the pattern in the material and then started on the other half. When we turned around to get the first half, it was gone. There was nobody else in the house with us, and we couldn't find it anywhere, so we ended up cutting a new half. Fast forward about a year or so, my pet snake has got loose, and we believe he may be in the heating ducts. The house we lived in was just over 100 years old, so it had these really old-looking vents at the bottom of the walls that were covered in a decorative wrought iron. We unscrewed one in our dining room, and my mother gasped. You guessed it. She reaches in and she pulls out the half pair of pants we had been trying to find, and also an apron with the faces of the house's previous owners printed on it. It's interesting that they found the previous owner's stuff as well. If I lived in that house, I would check all of those vents. You never know what you could find, because it would appear that they have a resident poltergeist. Now, this last one is quite unusual. My daughter had a Kindle that she swore she left in the kitchen. She had a very specific memory of where she left it. At the time, she had been playing a Simpsons game that would periodically offer a dough if you forgot about it for too long. So the Kindle vanished, and we looked all over the house and in the car, etc. We even pulled her mattress off the bed and checked underneath. We did this more than once, actually. We went through her wardrobe and even through bags that were never used. We never found it. For a few days after it went missing, she insisted she could still hear Homer say, "Dough," every now and then, and this would set her to searching again. She ended up thinking it was under the floor, even though the room was carpeted. So, 18 months later, she is laying on her bedroom floor, next to the bed. She turns her head to look under the bed, and lo and behold, there it is, not 20 centimeters from her face, balanced up on its side. She says it fell over as soon as she saw it. Now, we pulled apart that bed more than once because she kept saying she could hear it. The doze could be heard for the amount of time that you would expect the batteries to last before they died. The Kindle appeared right at the edge of the bed frame in clear sight. There's no way we could have missed it, even if it had been there the whole time. So this one's really interesting to me because it seems that this Kindle was not quite manifested under the bed the whole time. You couldn't see it, you couldn't touch it, but you could hear it. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, it manifests on its side, balanced on its side, in front of the girl. Just bizarre. So anyway, continuing with the theme of apports, I want to have a look at some animal apports. Stick with me, because we're leading somewhere here. My husband and I recently moved into an older house. It was built in the late 1800s. I love the aesthetic, but something strange has been happening since we moved in. Our dog, who is a fairly large lab, keeps disappearing. We can hear her whimpering, but when we look through all the rooms, she is nowhere to be found. Now, this house has 3 bedrooms, but it is by no means a large house. It's 1 floor and takes all of about 3 minutes to search through each room. So each time we start in our bedroom and head back to check each room, hearing her whimper and making low barking noises the whole time. After searching the whole house and backyard, even though there's no way she could have gotten there on her own, she has turned up each time in our bedroom, the room we started with. Each time we have to force her out of the room because she is shaking and seems terrified. Once we get her out, she sits in our laps and shakes for about an hour before she calms down. This has happened now 4 times, and each time it gets more unbelievable. I'm not sure what to do, but I would like to have my dog remain in this dimension if possible. So again, we see this not entirely manifested situation, sort of half in this world, half in another. We can hear the dog, but we can't see it or touch it. And disconcertingly, this dog is conscious throughout the entire experience. Judging by its reaction, it doesn't seem like a very pleasant experience either. I used to live with my sweet little 14-year-old Yorkie, Miles, in a house in Arizona, built on an Indian burial ground, but I'm not sure if that had anything to do with this experience. One day I took Miles into the bathroom with me to take a shower. I often did this because I was afraid in that house. I always locked the bathroom door too, always. Miles was in between the toilet and the tub, laying down. I forgot my razor, so I get out of the shower, and he's nowhere to be seen in the bathroom. I even looked in the cabinets because I was so freaked out at this point. I left the bathroom after I was sure he wasn't in there, and I found him in my bedroom, facing a corner, with his hair sticking straight up, shaking like I've never seen him do before. I think he may have been teleported, which terrified him. The way they found him in the corner, that reminded me of the Blair Witch movie. So here we have another freaked out dog, who seems to have journeyed outside of space and time, and not enjoyed the experience one bit. But this doesn't just happen to canines. Reptiles have also been known to slip out of this reality. This happened over 15 years ago at my parents' house. I have a red-eared slider turtle that was in a tank with a metal mesh cover and UV lights resting on top of it. The tank was in my bedroom on the 2nd floor. One day my turtle climbed out of its tank. The metal top didn't look disturbed, but there was a dock, and I assumed he had somehow climbed out. Everyone in my house started looking for him. We were on hands and knees, checking bedroom closets, furnishings, cupboards, etc. We even looked around the main floor and the basement, too. Nothing. Not a trace. We looked for days. Nothing. 3 months later, one evening, I'm on the main floor in the study doing homework on the computer, and I hear a loud crash, like a bag of golf clubs falling over, from the main entrance hallway. It sounded like heavy metal falling on a tile floor. I ran out to look, and in the middle of the hall was my turtle. He was alive and looked fine. He wasn't dried up or anything. He was right side up, and there was no dust or dirt on him. There was one broken nail, which grew back, but the rest of him looked perfect. It's interesting that the turtle is still in the same condition as when it left, because 3 months is a long time to go without food and water, and I'm assuming that a turtle needs to stay moist as well. The Kindle story suggests that time still ticks in that other realm, I'll call it, because it took time for the battery to die out in that Kindle, evidenced by the doze that the young girl could hear for a couple of days. The incident with the turtle seems to be more like a time slip or a time travel experience, skipping from one time frame to a future time frame. That's my guess, the expert that I think I am. Also, the crashing sound is interesting to me because I've read quite a few paranormal stories where an event happens and there's this out of place sound. Generally, it is like a crashing sort of a sound. If you remember the skull experiment, where they witnessed a mini UFO flying around, and it made a out-of-place sound. Apparently they could hear the sound of what sounded like a matchbox rattling, which I thought was quite bizarre. But enough of that story, I guess. It's time to move on to my personal occurrence. And yes, it's an apport. And yes, it involves an animal. Right, so what is the big deal that Chris is going on about here? Well, first of all, I have to say, I'm quite excited to be sharing this story with you. It could be, just could be, paranormal. At the very least, it's extremely hard to explain, at least in my books. So what happened? Well, I think it was last week, maybe the week before, I was finishing off some editing for the last video that I did. It was a pretty hot day, and so I was all sweaty, all gunky and stinky, so I decided I'd go for a quick shower. Had the shower, I was in there for no more than 15 minutes, I'd say. Definitely no more than 20, closer to 15 minutes. Came back from the shower, and this is what I saw. Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God. And as you can see, I was quite perturbed, to say the least. So that is a water dragon. Now, I live not too far from a river. I live up the hill, and down by the river there, you'll see hundreds of them. They're very skittish, and they rely on the water for their self-defense. As soon as you get close to them, they're gone, off into the bushes, into the water. I've got some footage of their habitat. Went for a bit of a bike ride, a roll down the hill. As you can see, that's the river there. That's where they all live. I was only able to capture one at this time of day. This one actually kept its cool. And just plodded off into the bushes. Okay, so just to give you a sense of the distance this lizard had to have travelled to get to my desk. This little building here is where we saw that giant lizard, or the big boy. And all of this is parkland. There's football fields and velodromes, and there's all sorts of roads and trees and all sorts of stuff to navigate. And if you see this building here, this big building in the background, that's the local shopping centre, which is down the road from my place. So that building that you see, is at the back of the block that I live on. I live on the front of the block. So that lizard had to go even further up the hill, through those two blocks, to get to my room. Or my house, rather. And once it got to the house, it had to get inside somehow. I won't bore you with the layout of the house, but it would have been a bit of a challenge for it to get here. Okay, so now it's in my room. And remember, these things are very skittish. And so it's been sitting in my room for, I assume, hours without making a sound, me coming in and out all the time, it not getting spooked. The only way I can imagine that it got up on here is that it had to climb my curtain here. It had to jump across onto the shelf. It had to navigate its way past the bottles and junk and the lamp that's sitting on the shelf there. Then it had to, for some reason, it decided to come onto my desk, which, as you can see, there's only a narrow platform for it to jump onto. It also has to navigate its way past that speaker. Then once it's on the desk, decided to scuttle across here and sit on my notepad and wait for me. It's just bizarre. To me, that is almost as bizarre and strange as an apport, which is what I think happened. Yep, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to join all the crazies. And I believe that this was actually an apport. I just have to interject here. After coming across some footage of these water dragons climbing, I realised just how agile they are at climbing. So now my rational mind has kicked in and starting to outweigh that sort of desire that I want for it to be paranormal. I mean, it's still very baffling how it got up onto my desk in such a short amount of time, and how it got into my room in the first place. But like I said, after I saw these lizards climb, the rational explanation is becoming the preferred explanation in my mind. So I'll just let the video play through as I recorded it originally, because we're almost at the end here. And you never know, it could have been paranormal. I really want it to be paranormal. Either way, it's a very strange, very baffling occurrence. So in one of these subreddits, there was a character talking about his experiences with the paranormal, and he said this: I think that my openness to these phenomena has somehow let my mind become more attuned to perceiving them. I have so many stories I can't explain, but the thing is, they only occurred after I started researching and looking into these concepts. And I'm thinking that's what might have happened here with me, because I've been really focused on all of these paranormal topics for the last couple of weeks, because I'm starting to reboot the channel and get it moving. So I wonder, has my increased focus on the paranormal actually attracted the paranormal to me? I can only hope so. Fingers crossed on that. I'll keep you up to date if anything happens. Right, so I guess you guys are wondering how I chased this thing out of my room, because it's vaguely amusing. So I used a broom like any man would and chased it out the door towards the front door, and it decided to veer to the left into my bedroom. It's funny, and so I got in there and my room's a bit of a mess. I couldn't see it anywhere. So I had to tear everything out and throw all the clothes out. Eventually I found it tucked in behind the bed. And so what I had to do was build a track for it. I found all these bits of old cardboard and boxes and stuff, and built a track going from my bedroom around the corner and out the front door. Got my broom and chased it out. And they look funny when they run. I'll try and find some footage for you.
What a dragon. Let's go after it.
And that's all I've got time for this week. It's a little bit late. I want to try and get these out weekly, on a weekly basis. I'm just deciding what day is the best day. I'm tossing up between Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'll probably release this one the coming Tuesday. Well, it'll be Tuesday now. And the next video I think I'll do on a Thursday and see how that goes. See how it suits you guys. And yeah, anyway, I'm just thinking out loud. I'll let you go. I'll see you next time.